My name's Lee and you'd think I have it all. My dad owns the most famous sushi chain on the West Coast, my mom's the president of a high-tech robotics company, and my bank account balance has more zeros than I can count. But somehow my new roommate, a guy named Frank, managed to convince himself that I was broke. Really broke. I just moved into my first apartment in Golden Coast City, ready to finally experience normal life after spending most of my days in private schools and on family vacations to places that only seem real on postcards. But apparently Frank was under the impression I'd been sleeping in alleys and panhandling between jobs at the local fast food joints. How? No clue. I think it's the worn-out jacket I like to wear, because believe it or not, even rich people can have sentimental stuff. The worst part? He thinks I'm an imposter. That's right, Frank has decided that I'm some mysterious cell phone stealing vagrant who somehow tricked the landlord into letting me live here. Oh hey Frank, this must be your phone, I said on the first day, finding it in the couch cushions. What? You think I don't see what you're doing? He whispered, squinting at me. Just because you found it doesn't mean you didn't take it. You're sneaky. I'll give you that. I was so baffled I actually apologized for finding his phone, which only made things worse. And that's how I ended up pretending to be broke. After all, what better way to defuse a bizarre accusation than to just roll with it? So this is how my new life as Poor Lee began. And oh, did it get interesting when I met Betsy. The first time I saw her I was stuffing my face with street tacos. It had been a long day of avoiding Frank, who had taken to hiding his valuables in increasingly weird places like the freezer or behind the toilet tank. Betsy was sitting at the next table watching me inhale my fifth taco like I hadn't eaten in a week. You okay there, buddy? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I grinned, my mouth still full. Better than okay, I said through a mouthful of tortilla. She smirked. Let me guess. Hard day at the office. I thought she was being sarcastic, but then I realized she was actually serious. Maybe it was the dirt stains on my jeans from that character-building hike my dad insisted on taking me on last weekend. I might have still had some mud in my hair. Or maybe it was the borrowed taco money from Frank's stash that had fallen out of my pocket. Either way, I went with it. Yep, just another day in the trenches. She looked me over, clearly not buying it. I get it. I've been there too, she said with a sigh. Working at my dad's old car dealership isn't exactly a walk in the park either. Salespeople get wild. I laughed and said, you're telling me. People don't realize how tough it is out there. This was going great. She thought I was some down-on-my-luck guy with a tough job and she could sympathize. And somehow I was genuinely enjoying this undercover life. By the way, name's Lee, I said, extending a hand. Betsy, she replied, shaking it firmly. I come to this taco stand every Thursday. If you want to drown your sorrows in salsa again next week, I'll be here. I don't know why I kept the charade up, but I did. The next Thursday I showed up looking as broke as possible. I found an old t-shirt with a hole in it and purposely wore mismatched socks, hoping to play the part better. By now Frank had taken his paranoia to a new level. He was locking his bedroom door using thumbprint scanning to secure his laptop and marking his snacks with his initials. Meanwhile, Betsy and I kept meeting up, and she was surprisingly fun to talk to. She told me stories of dealing with customers, her family, and her weird obsession with conspiracy theories about birds spying on people. We shared cheap nachos, watched open mic comedians bomb, and one night we even walked a stray cat back to its owner after finding it stuck in a tree. But then came the first big test of my broke guy persona. It was Friday and Betsy and I were at this fancy charity auction. Don't ask how I got there. My mom thought it would be a good look for the family. I almost didn't recognize Betsy in her sleek dress, her usual messy ponytail replaced by a classy updo. She did a double take when she saw me. Lee. You're here, she whispered, wide-eyed. Did you sneak in? No. I mean, kind of. My mom works here sometimes. I stammered. You clean up nice, she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. Almost too nice. I laughed, awkwardly tugging at the bow tie my dad had practically forced me to wear. Yeah, well, it's a borrowed suit, I lied. I mean, technically it was my dad's, since he thought I didn't own anything classy enough for the occasion. She didn't need to know that. Betsy gave me a skeptical once-over, but the attention quickly shifted to the stage where the auction was in full swing. Then the auctioneer held up the next item, a weekend getaway package at some luxury hotel in the mountains. Oh, I've always wanted to go there, Betsy sighed, staring at the screen displaying images of the resort's cozy log cabins and hot springs. I looked at her and without thinking raised my paddle. There was a collective gasp from the crowd. Betsy looked horrified. I realized what I'd done about 2 seconds too late. Lee. Are you insane? You can't afford that. I froze, trapped between the lies I'd told and the panic in her eyes. So I did the only thing I could think of. It's fine. It's only one weekend. I'll figure it out. The auctioneer nodded, declaring me the winner with a smirk. And with that I found myself on the hook for an absurd amount of money and a weekend trip that I hadn't exactly budgeted for, because I didn't need a budget. Normally. But poor Lee certainly did. So there we were a week later, driving up to the mountain resort in Betsy's old car, me sweating bullets at the thought of keeping my cover intact for an entire weekend. Betsy was excited, completely unaware that I'd dragged myself into this ridiculous situation to keep the facade going. The place was, in a word, magnificent. Betsy was practically speechless and I was wondering how long I could keep pretending to be poor in a place where the doorman probably earned more than Frank thought I did. Once we got to our cabin, Betsy flopped onto the giant bed and looked at me with a grin. "You know, Lee, you're kind of amazing," she said. "You're always down to do the craziest stuff even though I know it's not easy for you." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, well, you know what they say, fake it till you make it." Her expression softened. "One day you won't have to fake it anymore." And at that moment I realized this whole broke Lee act was officially unsustainable. How was I going to tell her the truth? The longer I kept it up, the more it felt like the real charade was hiding who I actually was. The big reveal happened on the last day of the trip at the checkout desk, where they recognized my name and offered me complimentary valet service, sparking an awkward silence between us. "Wait. Are you rich?" she asked, eyes widening. I couldn't deny it anymore. "Betsy, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to lie. It's just you seemed so cool and I wanted to feel normal." For once. To my surprise, Betsy just stared at me, then burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Lee, this is the funniest thing that's happened to me all year. You were pretending to be poor." Yes," I said, sheepishly scratching my neck. "Well, you were awful at it," she said, giggling. "But I guess we both like a little adventure. And guess what? Now you owe me some tacos. From the good taco stand." I laughed, feeling the weight of the secret finally lift. Betsy might have been the only person who could make me feel more alive while knowing my whole story.